Hello, and welcome back. The last few months I've been accomplishing my childhood dream of being one of those YouTubers who randomly disappears for months on end for no reason at all, and then just kind of returns, again, for no reason at all, barely acknowledging that they were even away, and then you think to yourself, but why? Why did they come back? What could be the reason? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they, if they didn't want to make videos anymore, why would they? And then as if by magic, this video is sponsored by Movie Palette. Movie Palette is a company with passion for both art and film, and decided to bring them both together in a lovely little product for us, the consumer. Now, I'm a bit of a movie nerd. I'm one of those annoying movie nerds that will not let you watch a film in peace. I will talk all the way through it, probably, and give you fun facts and weird things, like who is cameoing in this scene and whatever. I'm annoying, basically, is what I'm getting. So Movie Palette was a bit of an answer to my prayers as an annoying film nerd who talks about colour quite a lot, because basically what they do is they take the main driving colour in every sort of shot or scene from a film, put it into a sort of line, and then add it on this big, lovely portrait in a chronological order. So this film, this just looks like a nice art piece. This is a nice staple to a room. But actually what it is it represents the film The Shining, one of my favourite movies. And if you're familiar with The Shining, you'll notice that at the beginning there's a few sort of more muted colours. You've got a little bit of a green splodge here in the middle, there, which is the bathroom scene, the famous bathroom scene. Got some sort of red splotches here, which I can only presume are the blood elevator. And then towards the end, on the right-hand side, you've got a lot of dark blue. So that's quite nice. It's, it's a very cool staple that I'm pretty chuffed with. And I was surprised how nice quality it is when it arrives in real life. And that's not even just a sponsored bit, that's just me being honest. And this wouldn't be a really good sponsorship for you unless you guys got a bit of a discount code on this, in which case you can get 15% off at the checkout on Movie Palettes if you use the code SHINING50. A huge thank you once again to Movie Palette for sponsoring this video and sending this gorgeous art piece out for me to talk about on this. It helps make the content, it helps make it look good, helps make it nice. I would say more consistent, but that's probably not true, so yeah. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So, I did disappear for a little while. Jodie got announced as the next Doctor, at the time the 14th Doctor, but obviously now it's the 15th Doctor. David and Catherine got announced to be returning, and then I kind of just dipped. I did a lot of podcasty Twitch stuff as well. All of that kind of ceased to exist as well. For my own reasons, I just kind of got tired of it, and I didn't really enjoy it anymore. But one thing I always said was that, I grew this channel with the Jodie era of Doctor Who, and it seemed only fair that I come back and do some sort of review for the final episode of her era, considering I've reviewed every other episode of her era. So here it is, my review of Power of the Doctor. Going into this episode, I was excited but a little bit skeptical. It's a regeneration story, so of course I'm excited. It's always going to have that sort of exciting appeal because you want to see how they're going to do it. You want to see how they're going to wrap up the end of this era, how they're going to send off all the companions. But I was a bit skeptical because I wasn't particularly keen on either the Daleks. I'm definitely not Legends of the Sea Devils or whatever it's called. I didn't really enjoy that that much. Either the Daleks was better, but you can see my own reviews for those if you're interested in what I actually thought. But I didn't really love those episodes, and I kind of felt that towards the end of Series 13, Chibnall's scripts are becoming a little bit more predictable in terms of how they represent certain characters and how they do certain things. It's not necessarily a hugely bad thing, but it just wasn't really for me towards the end. I more enjoyed the earlier Series 11, Series 12 kind of stuff. Needless to say, I was very excited to still get into this because, again, it's a regeneration story, and what was made even more exciting was that we didn't actually know who 13 was going to regenerate into in the end, which I will point out isn't anything to do with Chibnall's writing team. That is entirely down to Russell T Davies announcing 2 new Doctors, Tennant returning and Jodie, so there was some mystery left there. That's no credit to the people behind this episode, as much as I would love to give credit to them for that. It's just luck of the draw, and it still made the episode a lot more exciting than it probably would have been without. Who knows though? Anyway, let's start with the opening of the actual episode itself. The cold open, one of the longest and most action-packed cold opens in Doctor Who history. That's what they were kind of hyping up. They were really bigging this one up, and it was good, but it could have been better. And let me break that down. It was great to see the TARDIS team in the classic orange spacesuits, and obviously seeing a big train, high speed, the TARDIS trying to catch up with it. It's designed as an action sequence, and action sequences in Doctor Who have a habit of either being really good or really naff. But one of my favourite scenes in Doctor Who of all time was in The Runaway Bride, TARDIS on the motorway. I love that scene. That's just action-packed. So, yeah, I was going into it with open ideas. One thing I wasn't particularly keen on was, the ideas all work on paper. This whole sequence is really exciting, on paper. But I feel like the VFX team were done a little bit dirty with this one. either they didn't have enough time, or this is just not their best work, because frankly, this looked awful. And I don't mean to be like continually critical about this, but you're going to get a lot of stuff like this. Like CGI criticisms, especially in the modern day when you're trying to compete with big production TV shows. This opening sequence was just full of just poor effects, like where the light tunnel was, all different colours of the rainbow, which was kind of an interesting visual choice, but felt a bit tacky. The Cybermen flying through the air didn't really work. I didn't believe that they were on top of a train. Like, this just kind of felt, there was a lot of things there that I just wasn't particularly keen on. And yeah, Dan gets shot in the face. The 13th Doctor confronts the Cybermasters who are trying to steal a child. There's a lot of different ideas and things going on here, and I will say, on paper, amazing, but as like a final product, it was very like in your face, and it kind of worked, but it didn't. I feel like it could have been something else. I feel like we could have seen something else here, and it would have been more impactful. Anyway, this eventually leads to Dan leaving the TARDIS, which came out of complete nowhere. Everyone thought that he was going to die in the opening sequence, and it didn't happen, and I was honestly a bit surprised that he didn't die in the opening sequence, just to sort of raise the stakes, because he didn't come back for the rest of the story. He wasn't really needed. He probably had about one line of dialogue after he officially left, right at the end, and that was kind of it. Which feels really weird, because he was quite a good companion, and it feels just a really out-of-place thing. It felt like they were trying to wrap up a lot of things at once here. The last story, they have to get rid of all the companions, bring back old companions, bring back old monsters, do the Master, have 13 regenerate, do all of this thing in an hour and a half. Yeah, an hour and a half is a long time, it's cool, but it doesn't feel like an hour and a half because they're doing so much constantly. And that's, again, a running theme with Chibnall stories, is there seems to be a lot going on, and this is one of them that has an unfortunate side effect where Dan just leaves, and he's got no home, and he's just left, and that's it. There's nothing really much to it. There's some nice lines of dialogue in there, but I feel like this could have come at the end of Legend of the Sea Devils. I know there was a good emotional point at the end of Legend of the Sea Devils anyway, which was the best thing about that story, so you didn't need to do this there, but kind of felt a bit weird doing it here. Especially that I felt it just didn't come back at all throughout the episode. It was like, oh, this is just the goodbye then. Weird. To be honest, it just kind of stinks of John Bishop being too busy in terms of filming schedules to be able to actually make most of the shoot for Power of the Doctor, which may be the case. It may be just that they were trying to get rid of him, but either way, it shouldn't have been allowed to look this obvious that they were trying to just get him out of the episode. That's the problem I have. Then they introduce a rogue Dalek, which we'll get into shortly. That's where Ace and Tegan return, Kate Stewart, Unit. There's this sort of strange Cyberman planet thing that's going on. Chibnall's script's really bouncy around, so you'll have to be a little bit sort of patient with this review. Anyway, Ace and Tegan's inclusion in this episode was probably one of my favourite things about it. Both of them felt like they're actual characters. They didn't just stand around in the background and do nothing like Kate did in Flux, or Captain Jack did in Revolution of the Daleks, so it was nice to see them actually get involved, actually feel like their characters coming back. Not quite to the level of Sarah Jane for me, never will be, because that's just like my childhood, I grew up on that, but it's nice to see other companions that I recognise coming back and interacting with the current Doctor. And hell, even Kate got to do something. She wasn't standing around like she was in Flux. Kate Stewart was actually being Kate Stewart, actually acting like Kate Stewart, which is nice to see, because we didn't get that in Flux, so that's cool. They have a quick reunion with the 13th Doctor, which again feels really believable, really well done. And then we rush to the Master. And yeah, Sacha Dhawan's Master is back, and he is once again one of the best things, not only about this episode, but about the entire Jodie era. His performance is always just so... I don't know, he just sort of sucks my attention whenever he's on screen. I always want to see what he's doing, because it's the most interesting thing that's happening, in my opinion. I'm just drawn to him. He's funny, and I like to laugh at him because he's such a bastard, and I think that's brilliant. His whole over-planned Joker-style get caught and released plan does really work because of the Siberian thing still being inside of him, so that works well. Him being complete batshit, cocky, and just like incredibly camp worked again brilliantly for the character. This incarnation really embodies that so well and is again a thrill to watch. His interactions with Ace and Tegan and Kate were all really exciting. The callbacks, not too heavy-handed, but good enough so the die-hard fans will know what's being talked about. Auntie Vanessa and the Master being a cat. The one thing I wish they'd done is reference some sort of interaction between Kate Stewart and the Master beyond the fact that she's just the Brigadier's daughter. And I kind of get a feeling that's just because they didn't want to sort of lock themselves into where this incarnation takes place before or after Missy. I always saw this incarnation as being based after Missy, so you could kind of call back to the events of Darkwater and Death in Heaven, Magician's Apprentice, etc. But obviously that's just not the case because I don't want to sort of stick to that. So I completely understand, but I would have liked to have seen more of a reference to Kate's actual character opposed to just being the daughter of her dad, because cool. Then we have the Dalek plan, which is, yeah, it kind of works. It's decent, it's somewhat, but it just encapsulates everything I've been really despising about the Daleks in recent years. They do nothing. They just sit around and do nothing. I miss the presence and horror aspect they had from Series 1 and 2, hell, even Series 3 and 4. I thought Chibnall had it in the bag with Resolution, I think it was. The whole Dalek squid thing, it was new, it was inventive, it made a single Dalek the threat of the episode. It didn't need to encapsulate a big army of just drones that stand around and do nothing. Then even Revolution of the Daleks was interesting. They had some good ideas in there that were quite effective and bounced off Resolution. But since then, Flux and these bloody specials, either the Daleks and the Power of the Doctor, they're just sort of wasted. And then you have the whole good Dalek thing again, which, yeah, they try and make unique with the whole mention of the Khaleds and the whole mutation of the race thing. But let's remind you, we've had a good Dalek in Twice Upon a Time, Into the Dalek, Asylum of the Daleks, Journey's End, if you want to include Dalek Khan, Evolution of the Daleks. This is a trope that's been going on for the last few years, and it's like, we need some more original ideas for Daleks. And again, I thought Chibnall had that in the bag with his earlier work in this era, but my god, this is just right back to what I do not like about the Daleks. And the fact that they still haven't been redesigned is just like, it encapsulates that for me. It's like they're just the same old Daleks, back again to stand in the background, have some dumb plan, and then all get blown up at the end. Cool. I want to see the Daleks done well. I really do, and I think they can be. I just think it's so easy to just write them in and be background fodder because they've got so many props in the BBC archive that they can just wheel out. I just kind of wish we could do something more interesting with them, like Dalek, or even like Resolution, like a sort of independent story, a small scale, one Dalek being the threat. And even when it's not one Dalek being the threat, I love what like Russell's original era did with the Daleks. All of they were like interesting new stories every time, and even when they are just a bit in the background and getting blown up for no reason, like the Cult of Skaro, there's just 4 of them, you know? That kind of effect. I'm missing that. Then you have the Master's Dalek plan, which is sort of a nice little tongue-in-cheek reference there for Sasha's Master. The Doctor gets trapped up in a Dalek, and then she gets taken to Russia, St. Petersburg, in I can't remember what year it was, story history nerds, but I can't remember. You have the whole thing as the Master dressed up as Rasputin, which, yeah, is cool again on paper, but I feel like they could have done a lot more with, definitely. However, it was worth it simply just for the Rasputin dance, because that song is a banger, and it just took me right back to the Series 3 finale with Sim, dancing around to the Scissor Sisters. Yeah, I just love that whole thing. One of the best parts of the episode for me. Naff as it is, camp as it is, I don't care. That's peak Doctor Who for me. And then we have the forced regeneration plot, which I will start off by saying I really love the idea of. It's interesting, and when I was first watching the episode, I was shocked. It did surprise me. It was a good twist because I didn't see it coming. You don't expect the Doctor in their regeneration story to sort of regenerate halfway through and it all go wrong and it not be emotional and impactful. I thought that was it. I genuinely thought, like, Sacha Dhawan is now the 14th Doctor. And I didn't know what they were going to do with that. And I was so excited at the prospect of it. Like, I even said, I was sat with my dad at the time, and I was like, this is very brave of them. This is very ballsy. Like, I can only respect it. I don't love the idea, but I like what it could do and what it could bring forward. And there's some exciting ideas in there. And then immediately, before you even have a chance to think about the mystery behind it, Sacha Dhawan just starts acting like the Master again. Don't get me wrong. I think the performance is brilliant. I think the writing is great. I think the costume is brilliant. But it just felt so close yet so far to something that could be really, like, brilliantly iconic, because it's just something that just gets reversed, that sort of magic button effect that we had in early Russell T Davies era, where something big and catastrophic happens and you just hit a button and it goes back to normal, which is fine. But this is kind of that thing again where I feel there's some more ideas that could have been toyed with here. Like, personally, I would have seen, like, I look at the Master's plan and I'm like, oh, so you want to tarnish the Doctor's reputation by going around and doing all this sort of stuff. And you have the power of forced regeneration. Why are you turning the Doctor into like Sacha Dhawan's incarnation of the Master, who acts like the Master and looks like the Master? You're not tarnishing anyone's reputation there. It would make way more sense. The Doctor wouldn't even have to be kidnapped, and Sacha could just regenerate into a Jodie Whittaker look-like face, and then be the Master. Or better yet, have them swap, so that no one knows who the Master is and no one knows who the Doctor is. That was the original theory going into this episode, that the the people at UNIT would think that the Master in his little seismologist gear would be a new incarnation of the Doctor, and vice versa. And again, seeing Sasha play the Doctor is something that I could really picture and I thought would be really exciting, and vice versa, Jodie playing the Master would have also been brilliant. And to see that dynamic would have been so interesting from the other way around, and I just feel like it's a bit of a waste opportunity. It's fine, it's not the end of the world. It would have made more sense in terms of the story and the character and the plot, and it would have been a more interesting thing, but I'm not a writer. Who knows? You do what you want. Either way, that does bring us to the Guardians of the Edge sequence, which kind of acts as our this is the Centenary special kind of part of the episode. You know, Jodie walks to this cliff edge and there's a figure in sort of black and red robes. It turns out to be David Bradley's first Doctor, who then sort of morphs between 5th Doctor, the 6th Doctor, the 7th Doctor and the 8th Doctor, which is a really cool, exciting visual that I was really delighted to see. Again, as a fan, I think there's a lot of theories going around that they were going to be in the episode. I didn't expect one like this, and I actually wasn't anticipating it at that point. I think I got so lost in the story that I forgot about the rumours of this happening, and I was so shocked to see all of them, and so delighted as well to see this is the way they're going to do it. This is the kind of part of Chibnall's era that I really like. You're not just bringing back these Doctors for no good reason. You're using them in a very interesting and different kind of way. The Guardians of the Edge is a really nice idea to bring back all the Doctors and sort of not have to de-age them or make them look different or recast them. You can kind of have them there in these robes and be them incarnations of the Doctor. You know, like the Curator. You can always argue that that's a return to like Tom Baker's form. Like maybe that incarnation was in the Guardians of the Edge and then kind of fought their way out to become a new incarnation. Maybe you could say the same thing about David Tennant. I don't know. You can sort of make your own ideas up, but the idea of Guardians of the Edge and the visuals of that and the aesthetic of that is a gorgeous one, and I'm so happy we got to see that introduced, and I think it was such a nice, it was such a nice visual, and again, to see Paul McGann in his costume as the Doctor again was just exciting, it was such a nice moment. And as I say, this kind of acts as a bit of an encapsulation of everything I do like about the Chibnall era, these gorgeous aesthetics and ideas, the vortex that the Timeless Child falls out of, the giant crumbling house in the black and white sort of arena that's in flux, and I think there's some gorgeous ideas. I mean, God, the entirety of It Takes You Away. There's some really gorgeous kind of ideas in the Chibnall era and visuals and sort of concepts that feel very out there and different and something that I want to see more of or would have liked to have seen more of. But yeah, it is what it is. It's over now, and that was a gorgeous way to end it, the Guardians of the Edge. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I like to see with this era, and I think the one thing that will sort of stick with me as a hugely positive thing is those gorgeous kind of old-fashioned retro-y kind of, but also kind of contemporary visual ideas that we get on screen in Doctor Who in this sort of era anyway. I'm rambling now, but I know what I like. That's basically what I'm saying. We then get the hologram scenes, which I've got a bit of a script for, but I'm just going to ramble about because I love them. I think, again, another gorgeous idea to bring back these old Doctors. The hologram idea is a one that can have Jodie in multiple places at once, but also kind of give her that flip and give these sort of the companions the closure they want without just bringing the Doctor in, because it would be terrible to have a new TARDIS appear and then Sylvester walks out. It's because he is older and he does look different and he wouldn't be exactly the same, and you'd feel like this kind of invading on Jodie's sort of area, but you get these lovely moments without having to earn the build-up. That sounds wrong, that sounds like a negative, but actually I really like it as just having these scenes. I'm more of a 7th Doctor era kind of person myself, but I have to admit that the 5th Doctor and Tegan's scene was incredibly done and probably the better of the two. Having the mention of Adric, the Cybermen, obviously you hit all those key points that you'd expect, but honestly I wouldn't have expected Chibnall to be able to do something like that. I just wouldn't have thought that would be his go-to for a story like this, and as much as something that I'm sure a lot of fans would easily write, for me, was something that was, oh my God, I'm amazed that we're seeing this on TV. Like Tegan and the 5th Doctor reuniting and talking imagine if Sarah Jane got to meet the 4th Doctor again. That's such a gorgeous idea and feeling that I'm glad we got to see with two, fan favourite companions. And those moments were beautifully written and beautifully performed by both sets of actors. And now we get on to the Chibnall third act, which is something we've seen a lot of in the previous years, especially with Flux. But the Chibnall third act in this is something I sort of coin because it's something I get quite used to in this era where you've got 20 minutes, 30 minutes left, and you've got Ace, Tegan, Yaz, Graham, Dan, Ish, Kate, the Master still knocking around, the Daleks, the Cybermen, and 13th Doctor and her regeneration. You've got a lot to do there in a very little amount of time. You've left yourself not very much room to play about with it in. And as I say, it's something we've seen a lot of, i.e. the Vanquishers, which is just kind of rushed right at the end, and doesn't have the time to kind of relax. I'm not saying I wanted like a Tennant end of time farewell where half of the episode is him visiting people and being like, bye, I'm gonna die. Like, that's just, I didn't want that, but it's very rushed. It's very rushed, and yeah, sure it works, but it's very rushed. Vinder is in this as well, who I kind of honestly forgot to mention because I kind of forgot that he was in this episode. He kind of rocks up, does his thing, shoots the Master, bigs up freelancers, and then kind of disappears from the episode altogether. So that's fine. A lot of people were saying they felt that that role was supposed to have been played by Captain Jack, but had to be swapped out. I don't even think that's true. I just think they didn't know what to do with Vinder, and they just sort of brought him in just because, and they could put him in the trailer. You know, yeah, it's fine. It's a good performance. Nothing really notable. Nothing really, it doesn't really add anything to the story or anything. I feel like a lot of people have mentioned this, but I get the impression that, especially rewatching Flux recently as well, that Vinder and Bell were designed to be like timeless child doctors, like parents, in the early draft of the script, and maybe that was kind of abandoned. Maybe there's no connection altogether, but it felt like they had a lot of focus on the baby and them two as a couple. Throughout Flux, that it felt they were kind of trying to lead it somewhere, and obviously if that was the idea, they've fully abandoned it by now, so yeah, that's cool. The Doctor and the Master's final confrontation is an interesting one for me. I do really enjoy both their performances. I think the moment is earned, it feels right, the dynamic between them two and their story as a Doctor and Master has kind of come to an end in a really well put together and satisfying way. There was more in the script about how the Master would get caught as Rasputin and like killed as Rasputin was. Obviously there's a lot of history around Rasputin's death, him sort of surviving death, surviving being poisoned, stabbed, etc., and eventually being just like dumped in a lake and left to drown. Or he might have already been dead by then, I'm not sure, but the idea is basically that it's sort of, there's a lot of mystery around that, so there could have been something to do with Time Lords and stuff in there, something to do with the Master being Rasputin. It's a great idea that nothing was really done too much with, and it's a shame they didn't get to explore that with what was originally written in the script. But again, the final confrontation is fine. The only thing I don't like about it is that Jodie's death is officially, well, not Jodie's death, but 13's death is officially by a giant CGI death ray, which I think is just so empty. When you've had so many of these gorgeous personal encounters with her and the Master, you felt like he should have been the one to put the final touch on it, not just press a button which like moves a giant death ray and hits her. Not even her, it's a stunt double, but yeah, it just kind of felt a bit shallow. But yeah, you get that, the Master dies and Yaz takes her out to the TARDIS, and you get the final sequence of this episode. We get a bit of a brief moment with 13 surrounded by everyone, which I thought was a really nice moment. I thought it was going to hark back a little bit to the 5th Doctor and have, you know, all the faces around her at one point. I was like, oh my god, that's going to be really weird. But then she sort of passes out and then wakes up, and then Yaz has dropped everyone off home. So there's two things about this. One, it's very like, I didn't want the Tennant era goodbye where it's like half the episode. But then on the other hand, I just think like, God, that's it. That's the goodbye for all those characters. Like Graham, probably never going to see 13 again. Ace and Tegan might come back at some point in like a Big Finish special or something like that. It's just like, that might happen, but it also might not, and that might also be their goodbye. Kate Stewart, just a goodbye. There was just kind of nothing there. It was all off screen, and again, it felt quite rushed. Chibnall third act, what can I say? Anyway, this scene was a bit of a gorgeous moment. It reminded me of a lovely parallel from Parting in the Ways, where Rose wakes up in the TARDIS and the Doctor's flying it and he's about to regenerate, and they have to have that little talk and explain that and know what's going on. And it's a bit of a flip on that, 13 waking up and not knowing she's regenerating, Yaz knowing she is, and that's what's about to come, and already prepared herself for that. I think was a really nice parallel of that. Whether it's intentional or not, I'm not sure, but it was gorgeous, and I love this scene so much. I think the performance between the two of them is great, and I think there's a desperation there, and Yaz's silent understanding of that and what's going on is beautiful. And I think Mandip Gill is so underrated as an actress, and I think with this era, I think she's been dealt a bit of a difficult hand, because in some parts she's been given some like the best stuff. I feel like she should have been given so much more. There was a lot of stuff with them where Ryan got to shine quite a lot in series 11 and 12. But I wish the time was given more to Yaz and they had more time to develop the sort of romantic aspect between those two characters, which I guess I'll talk about
I don't like the way they wrap that up. I don't like the fact that it's not acknowledged at all about them having an interest in each other, since it was such a huge thing in Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils. I know people aren't particularly bothered and pretty happy with the conclusion, but I, for one, was expecting some sort of conclusion to that. Maybe not like a kiss, but like some sort of actual conclusion to the thread that's been built up over the last 2 specials. Felt a bit weird that wasn't even addressed at all. I love the idea of one last trip, the 2 of them sitting on top of the TARDIS, having an ice cream together. It felt very in character for both of them, and I feel like them having a bit of a talk was really the nicest way to end their 2. I mean, Yaz was probably the only one who got a proper goodbye in this episode, and I really appreciate that they gave her the time to do that, because I wouldn't have been surprised if they just dumped her off and were like, bye, because it could have very easily happened. Which is kind of what happened, and that's the one thing I don't like about it, is that it didn't feel very in character for Yaz to be like, oh, I don't want to leave. Oh, I like this alone. Okay, guess I'll never see you again. Because that's kind of where it's implying there, is that like, all right, Yaz has just gone. So she's pretty much, oh, I don't want to leave. I want to stay with you. I want to be here to support you. Okay, bye. And it's very much like very against her will. And I know it can't be helped, because the way the character's been written over the last few years can't be reflective of the behind-the-scenes creative decisions of the show, telling that Yaz can't come back. But I feel like they could have written a slightly more convincing conclusion to that character. You know, a little bit more convincing could have been done, maybe, opposed to 13 just being like, I'd rather go alone. Okay, bye. And that being it. You know, oh well. Then you have the companion support group, which is really nice, seeing Joe and Mel and Ian Chesterton, of course, as well, which is a very exciting little concept. Having them all together was really nice. It's a shame because they have like a little laptop there, so I kind of felt they were going to have some more cameos on there. That's at least what it says in the script that was released. Alas, that didn't really happen, which is unfortunate, but yeah, no, it would have been nice to see some more modern companions in there, but you know, it is what it is. I suppose they probably don't want to tread too much ground, just in case they do end up coming back for the 60th, or they do end up referencing those characters. But yeah, it's a nice scene, and it's a nice way to end off that era. Intercutting between 13th Doctor and her TARDIS travelling to the last location, whilst Yaz is talking about the Doctor being okay and moving on, you know, them discussing and talking about the Doctor, I think is a really nice, it's a nice piece of film, and I really do enjoy that, and I got a nice kick out of that, really. And then we have the actual regeneration itself, which we'll talk about. You know, Jodie standing on the top of, I can't remember what it's called, something door. It's this gorgeous sort of landscape. It's nice to see her regenerate outside the TARDIS. I think her last words were brilliant. If you'll pardon the pun. I guess not really a pun, is it? It's just the word brilliant. Her regenerating in a Tennant was a surprise. I wasn't particularly happy about the costume regeneration. That was a bit weird, but I'm sure there's going to be a reasonable explanation for that going forward. I thought the regeneration of X themselves were gorgeous, thanks to the wonderful Ben Pickles, who's a phenomenal VFX artist. Yeah, a lot of great stuff there, and a lot of exciting visuals to sort of, you know, enjoy. And again, the final sort of thing of bringing back Tennant, and you know, him realizing, we knew it was either going to be Tennant or Ncuti, and I feel like we probably guessed it was going to be Tennant at this point. Having that whole interaction with himself and looking at his hands and his teeth and all that sort of thing. Having the triple, you know, what thing, that's very Tennant, and I quite like that. That's good. It's a bit cheesy, it's a bit predictable. It's like him saying Alonzi, which is obviously going to happen in the 60th as well. But it's exciting, and it was nice, and it was a nice note to end on, that left me excited going forward. So, yeah. So, Power of the Doctor. What are my thoughts overall on this? Well, it's a hot mess of an episode. It really is a hot mess of an episode, but in the best possible way. The episode was all over the place and had so many things going on, but it did manage some really gorgeous tributes to the show's history. Somewhat better than the 50th in some capacity, I'd probably say. But the scenes, the hologram scenes and the Guardians of the Edge, was a gorgeous way of honouring those classic Doctors without just bringing back old videos that the 50th did. They both work, but I kind of prefer what they did here. It was a fitting regeneration story for Jodie, you know, 101 things happening, loads of different fires put out with the characters, monsters, etc. But at the heart, something that kind of works, actually. And even if it doesn't work, it's a great bit of TV that is just enjoyable, and you can kind of just kick your feet back and enjoy. As a Doctor Who fan, I know that it's not perfect. You know, I don't love this story, and I don't think it's going to be one of my favourites to, you know, in the long run, but it is one that I could probably stick on in the background, put my feet up, watch, enjoy, and not have a bad thing to say about it, because, yeah, it's just a bit of fun. Like, I could question why and how Tegan survived that fatal fall by the looks of it. I mean, she fell down that stairwell or ladder well, whatever you want to call it. She fell into the abyss and just appeared in the next scene absolutely fine, which is strange. How come Kate Stewart was absolutely unfazed after being like assimilated for about a minute, screaming and like in agony, and then completely fine the next scene? No mention of it. It's just a bit strange. But what I'm trying to say is, who cares? I had fun, you know? Doctor Who at its absolute best, you could say it is like heaven sent, or like World Enough in Time, where it's beautifully written, beautifully directed, some of the best things you'll ever see on TV. But sometimes Doctor Who at its best is just camp and wacky and daft and fun, and I think that for me is what I get a lot of enjoyment out of. It's not for everyone, and it's hard to sell to people who don't watch Doctor Who, but I do enjoy those sorts of episodes and those sorts of ideas every now and then. Like, it's far from my favourite regeneration story. It didn't have anywhere near the emotional impact of some of my other favourites, but it's solid TV, and a really enjoyable end to Jodie's era. Far from perfect, not amazing, but it's good, you know, it's fun. The performances will really stand out. Jodie and Mandip, of course, getting a bit of a special mention there. Both of them were excellent throughout this entire episode, and have been consistently good throughout this era. I only wish they were given more material, especially Mandip earlier on in this era, because I feel like she had a lot more to show as, you know, present by these sort of later episodes. She's been amazing, and I would have loved to have seen more of that throughout the era. Sacha Dhawan, obviously brilliant, as always. And the music was really good. I have to say, like, it was impactful, it was familiar, not too overbearing on what's happening on screen. You didn't feel like it was bombarding you with I Am the Doctor and all of Akinola's, you know, top tracks like Murray Gold ended on. It actually is a really good soundtrack for a pretty solid regeneration story, and I have to respect that. Sigurd Akinola's leaving, and this is probably his last piece for Doctor Who, which on one hand I'm quite happy about, because I'm not a massive fan of some of the stuff that he tried and was experimenting with, but I can't knock him for experimenting. Some of his musical ideas, motifs and ideas that he puts into his work is so much more interesting than just a catchy theme, and I think that's so overlooked by a lot of people. But yeah, once again, if you haven't already, listened to the soundtracks for all three of these specials, especially Eve of the Daleks, Legend of the Sea Devils and Power of the Doctor. All three of them, whatever you think of the episodes, the soundtracks are phenomenal. They're so good. Chris did a good job in the writing department. It's obviously his last episode. It's not perfect, but I'd say it's a perfect encapsulation of his previous work on the show. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, it's like a nice in-between. At its best, it's fun, and it's good Doctor Who. You know, it's fun. I like that. I keep saying fun, because it is fun. And as I say, it's not perfect, but I'm actually surprised that he managed to pull this together as well as he did. I will criticise Tribunal, I will praise him. You know, I've done both throughout the era in terms of reviews on my channel, and actually with this, it's a perfect balance of both. He got so much right. I was expecting this to be a flop. I was expecting there to be too many things going on, it being too scrambled and then not get anything right. And there were a few things, like Dan's departure I was unsatisfied with. I think some characters coming back on the Cybermen and the Daleks, you know, why did you need all that filler? But there was some really good stuff in there, and some really exciting emotional stuff in there that I really wasn't expecting to see, so I can't really knock it. I was pleasantly surprised by this. Anyway, that's basically it for me. I'm probably not going to do too many more videos going forward. It's the first time I've probably said this. I'm not going to leave a promise open for more when I just don't see that happening anytime soon. I'm definitely going to do some more creative projects, and I will be releasing my short film on this channel. I wrote and directed a short film earlier this year, or last year, depending on when this video comes out, which was a lot of fun. And a lot of, you know, it was quite exciting, and it's something I'm really excited to share. So that'll be coming on this channel probably quite soon. Probably early next year, so stay updated with that. But if you want to know my thoughts on any Doctor Who stuff or anything like that, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, both at georgesheard. If you're interested in the sort of creative projects I'm working on, Instagram, George Sheard Media also works as well. So thank you all anyway. If you have watched this and stuck through it, I really appreciate it. It's probably a bit of a long-winded video, and I've been away from YouTube so long, who really cares about what I think about this episode anymore? But I really do appreciate it, and I thank you all for sticking around and staying up to date. There'll probably be some more creative projects coming soon that I want to do for YouTube or Twitch or some sort of things. If you want to stay updated with that, please do follow me on Twitter and put notifications on if you're interested, because that's where I'm probably going to announce most of my stuff, if anything, going forward. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Do what you want. I'm not your dad. Thanks to Movie Palette again for sponsoring this video, and yeah, see you all later. Bye-bye.